Okay, good afternoon. Or hello, everyone. Good morning for some folk, afternoon for others. Welcome to our 230th Reading Online Sports Economics Seminar. It's good to have you all here. Good to have some of you here that have been here the whole time since we began in the COVID pandemic. We are sponsored by the Sports Economics Review, which has recently been listed in is it the Skimago list? I got an email from Alex and a WhatsApp message about it, but a good good marker of the progress of the journal, a good home for your sports economics manuscript, and of course hosted by University of Reading. I'm going to share my screen because I am your presenter today, and I'm very pleased to see at least one of my co-authors on the call, because it means that obviously all the difficult questions he can handle. This is a paper that I really like. My computer's very slow, so it might take a moment for me to actually share my screen, share my slides, and at the same time actually introduce my title. There is a reason why I couldn't open them. That's because I haven't actually opened the slides on my computer. So there we go. I will now open the slides on my computer, and then we can get going. So when you search for the slides, when you're trying to share your screen and you find that you can't see them on the list, and it's because you haven't actually opened them. But this is work jointly with Andy Chung, who's on the call, Gennaro Rossi, and Nils Brackman. Gennaro and Andy are colleagues of mine. Nils is up at the University of Newcastle, or Newcastle University since 2002. But one a very long way from here in Australia. Sorry, my computer is there we go. Slow start, but the title I've given it. The title I've put in the slides is different from the title that's in the reminder, but the title is "Football Matches and Policing: Extra Evidence from London." So let me just make that full screen as well. And this is actually the first time we've presented this work. So as always, it's great to get comments. It's a slight violation of my principles of the Roses talk, in the sense that this original paper, based solely on domestic football matches in London, has actually just been accepted for publication. But along the way, we decided there were particularly interesting aspects, particularly to do with European or international football matches that take place in London. So hopefully I'll take you through that as we go along today. A couple of administrative things. Please just ask questions if you have them. Just interrupt me because I can't see anything, just because the little thing on the side gets in the way of the slides for me. So please just interrupt at any point if you have questions. And also if you are able to let people into the meeting who join, because again, I can't see that, so I can't let people in. So there's a widely held belief, I would say, and a long-standing one, that football fans are violent, they're hooligans, they're thugs, and I think there's a reasonably solid basis for that belief, I would say. We all have memories. Many of us have memories of incidents of violence that maybe we've experienced or we've seen in the news. Terrible disasters in the 1980s. Episodes of hooliganism all around Europe, often involving English football fans as well. That view has necessitated, or it goes hand in hand with the idea that, well, such events require significant police resources in order to keep the public safe. So the rest, not just attending fans, but people in the places where football matches take place. And there's been a couple of stories fairly recently of games where away fans have been banned as a result of concerns about public order. So Maccabi Tel Aviv played at Aston Villa in the Europa League this season, and away fans weren't allowed to attend based on a view that there would be significant trouble caused if they were, and insufficient police resourcing to be able to manage that. So restrictions on fans are often necessary, and there's a long history of restrictions on fans, and so we'll kind of touch upon those as we go along. And so, anecdotally, the football and the crime link is established. I think academically, there have been papers not cited on this slide, possibly elsewhere. The one that springs to mind for me is the Bad for Business paper, which is a result of the UK government beginning to collect a lot of data on the bad behaviour of football fans in the late 1980s, such that you could get information on the number of arrests taking place at football matches on a fairly regular basis. And then that paper showed that that violence measured by these arrests and other antisocial behaviour was indeed bad for business. There'll be fewer fans at future football matches. It's worth saying that there is another side to it, which is the kind of the interaction between football fans and the police. So, crime, fans committing crimes, violent acts, etc., is one side of the equation, if you like, and the other side is police action. And what we're looking at specifically in this paper is we're looking at the impact of football matches on police use of force or police actions rather than fan actions. And again, it's relevant for all sorts of reasons. Now we'll cover a bit of the literature shortly. But one of the things that's again goes hand in hand is whenever there's a big football match where there's been trouble of one form or another, there will be claims by the football fans themselves and fan groups that policing was heavy-handed. Okay, so the police and how they handled situations is a significant part of, well, it may well be a significant part of what we're observing. Excuse me. What are we doing here? We're looking at administrative data provided by the Metropolitan Police in London on the use of force. It's data from 32 London boroughs, and we've got that data since April 2017 up to the present day. And what we're thinking about then is we're thinking about identifying the impact of football matches on police use of force by identifying when these football matches take place. And there's a whole literature that we're probably all now familiar with on the fact that we consider football matches to be mass events, lots of people congregating in one particular part of a town or city, and they've been associated with all sorts of things, not least the spread of COVID-19 and other infectious diseases. But Humphreys has a recent paper looking at the impact in London of football matches on traffic. And there is obviously an associated risk of this crime and antisocial behaviour from mass events, putting police forces under strain. And this is just some idea, again, of the English situation. As mentioned, English clubs headline were banned from European competitions in 1985 due to particularly bad behaviour by fans in European games. And around the late 1980s, the UK government, through the Home Office, began to collect statistics. And so we can see patterns like the following in terms of the number of football-related arrests per season. This is across essentially, I think it's across the 4 divisions. So it's a significant number of matches. As you can see, around 2,000 football-related arrests per season. You also get from the Home Office data information on banning orders as well. So if fans been found to misbehave, they can be given a banning order. Again, legislation restrictions that have been put in place over the years in relation to the way in which fans have behaved. And so, thinking a little bit about that incidence of I guess fan behaviour and potential police responses. There's a couple of theories that we appeal to. The first is that the routine activity theory, that crime occurs due to its spatial and temporal convergence of potential offenders and victims, and often a lack of law enforcement. So, of course, as we probably well aware, football matches are going to affect the concentration of people in a particular area, spatially, temporally as well, given kickoff time at a particular place in town, and alongside that, the allocation of police resources. Of course, this applies to all sorts of other events. This is something we'll get back to a little bit further along, because this applies to music concerts, street festivals, and so on. All sorts of different kinds of events, other than just football matches or even just sporting events. Probably more relevant to football is the idea of social identity. That is that group dynamics lead to intergroup hostility. Fans and their rivalries, which often, well, historically has led to lots of clashes between fans. And even if it isn't rivalries, sport invokes deep emotional involvement. And so crucial matches, you can imagine cup finals, matches that matter for promotion and relegation, involve deep emotional attachments. In fact, my background is a match for which I had a deep emotional involvement too. And there are famous papers looking at the reaction to this deep emotional involvement, not least the famous Card and Dahl paper looking at the impact of unexpected losses on domestic violence. So I said we're using crime and police use of force. And it's worth just spelling out that obviously crime data in terms of arrests and convictions and so on, banning orders, they reflect civilian behaviour and reporting decisions as well, whether people feel able to report or they feel the utility of reporting potential crimes or alleged crimes. Police use of force data, well, that records police actions during encounters with civilians. And so if a police officer has to use force in terms of stopping an individual from doing something in particular, that would be one use of force. If two police officers were involved, that would be two. That would be the two incidences of use of force. And so you have an idea of the police response rather than necessarily civilian behaviour. And I think it's important, and again, Nils, our co-author, is particularly knowledgeable in this respect, but mixing the two may lead to a misleading picture or conflate shifts in offending and changes in police community interactions. And Nils has a paper looking at how police use of force, in particular in London and particular events, led to different crime reporting responses in different neighbourhoods with different ethnic compositions in London. So in other words, police behaviour can influence the crime that we see in administrative data. That's a long bullet point. Yeah, I mean, basically, this point relates to obviously a literature to do with police use of force, often US-based evidence, but as mentioned, I think it's pertinent and relevant in the context of football crowds, because very often, certainly the football crowds themselves believe, even people that I might, I talk with and I've interacted with, and I consider to be reasonable people, would argue that the the use of force by police was excessive. And of course, there's plenty of evidence of police taking really tragic, terrible actions that have led to situations becoming much, much worse. The Hillsborough disaster in the 1980s is, I think, an example of that, where particular perceptions towards football fans influenced actions and decisions taken, leading to with tragic consequences in that particular case. And so that's kind of that might be the more relevant and more interesting dimension when it comes to the interaction between crime and use of force in a UK context, because police killings are relatively very rare in the UK compared to in the US, and there's some evidence listed here that there is an impact of police killings on willingness to report crime. And Nils again has a paper looking at crime reporting and clearance rates in the aftermath of a fatal shooting by the police in London in 2002. Okay, so the data, I already mentioned it. It's use of force data from the Met Police beginning in 2017, all 32 boroughs of London. It includes the date and the time of the incident, the location type. So this is useful for us, sport or event stadium, on public transport. Often flashpoints can be along the way to games rather than at the games themselves. We have information on subject behaviour, whether the officer themselves was assaulted in the incident, what the outcomes were, and what the subject's ethnicity was as well. And we're merging this daily borough-level panel data set of use of force incidents with football data. Our football data comes actually from three sources. I realised in putting this slide together, it comes from three sources. English Football League tables.co.uk, Soccer Base give us the dates of matches, so hence the match of the day, and the teams involved as well. In particular, we then use other information collected on the locations of stadiums to match them with London boroughs so that we know where games took place. Sample includes, certainly the first few tables will show, I'll show you, include football matches in the Premier League down to the 5th division, and they also include cup matches, domestic cup matches as well. We exclude the COVID period for almost all of our analysis for obvious reasons, that fans were not in the stadiums during especially this period, March 2020 through to July 21. And I've already talked through this. The main dependent variable is the daily count of use of force incidents at an officer subject level. So an incident involving two officers will be recorded as two separate uses of force. Yeah, so we're looking at the impact of football matches, and we can use the location and these other aspects of the data that we've got, and we construct this daily borough level count of use of force incidents. So we just use all the information that we got from the Met Police data set. So I said the primary treatment variable is the incidence of a football match. 17 of those 32 London boroughs host football clubs that are included in the analysis, and some boroughs accommodate multiple clubs. And so to give a geographic sense of that, this is London. The colour coding, which I've not given you any more information about, is population based. But the main point is these are London boroughs, so Barnet and Haringey, Redbridge, Newham, Bromley, Croydon, etc. And the blobs on here are different football clubs that are at different points, at different places in London. And as you can see, most of there's by and large a one team per borough. And down here, Hammersmith and Fulham is a slightly different one. Chelsea doesn't sit in Kensington and Chelsea, it sits in Hammersmith and Fulham, and Chelsea, Fulham and QPR all sit in that same borough. By and large, there's a little bit more of a spread. The blobs that are coloured, with the exception of Bromley, are teams that are not in this data set. Bromley play in white, and so they get a grey colour. And every other team that's in grey, other than that, so Tottenham as well, play in white. Every other blob, Uxbridge, Harrow Borough, and so on. These are very relatively small teams, not actually included in our data. But you can see we've got lots of teams already: West Ham, Arsenal, Tottenham, Leyton Orient, Dagenham, Redbridge, Charlton Athletic, Crystal Palace, Brentford. The other one to mention, Barnet, another Football League team. The other one to mention is, of course, Wembley. Wembley Stadium sits within London, hosts England matches, and hosts a range of cup finals, cup semi-finals, and so on. But in other words, there's lots of football that goes on in London. And so we're categorizing matches in our main analysis that I'll present into essentially very big matches, Premier League matches, big matches, Championship, Second Division, and the rest. Essentially, matches that are in the third, fourth, and fifth divisions, and matches that are in domestic cup competitions. And we do look into that in a bit more depth, and I'll see a little bit more as we go through. It's a binary treatment variable where it's 1 if there's a match in that borough on that particular day. Few things to say is that obviously games don't all take place on the same day. In the Premier League, they're not often on a Saturday, but it's certainly in the other divisions, they're most often on a Saturday and a Tuesday, whereas the Premier League, due to television, tends to have its matches much more spread over the course of the week. We are trying to check along the way, as mentioned, the potential for shock results or unexpected results to be a trigger, an emotional trigger, and therefore might be reflected in crime stats. And so we use, at the moment, we use Bet365 pre-match odds. And so going back to the sources of the data, that's from footballdata.co.uk rather than either of those two websites mentioned. And just in terms of descriptive statistics, that leaves us with 88,000 borough match observations between 2017 April and the present day. So daily count of use of force in a London borough. So therefore it's 32 observations per day, I guess, without doing the calculation. And so you can see that on average, there are 10 use of force incidents on a given day, the maximum being 444, the minimum being 0. And then there's a bit of a range here in terms of these places where these use of force incidents occur. Again, pretty low by and large. Pubs and bars, 0.07 per day. Public transport, 0.1. There is a Premier League match, on about 1% of our borough day observations. Championship match a little bit less, reflecting the fact that there are more Premier League clubs than Championship clubs in London. And again, same true with the FA Cup and League Cup and the remainder of lower division games. There's more of those because London has a lot of teams in the 5th division. There are a lot of great blobs on the map. Champions League, Europa League and Europa Conference League, European games. These are games that take place in London. This is the more recent addition to the data set. We're trying to think about that particular dimension of football. You'll see why in a little while. And then England. These are one variable. So 1 if there's a match on that day. Where the England match is recorded just for the area where London is, the borough that England's match is, which is Wembley, so that's Brent. Then these will be recorded for which team is hosting. So it could be Crystal Palace in a Europa Conference League match. It could be West Ham in a Europa League match in the not too distant past. Okay, so that's the data. This is our model. As I said, we're estimating the effect of football matches on police use of force. where FIT would be the number of incidents and I day T. And then we've got binary indicators for different types of football matches taking place in that borough on that day. We've got borough fixed effects. So some boroughs might be there might be higher levels of crime on a time invariant in a time invariant way. We also have day fixed effects to try and capture day specific effects, Christmas Day, New Year's Day, perhaps, but also in this way we can also capture the way in which differences in temperature might have an impact in terms of the need for police use of force. And so we're comparing areas with football matches to areas without football matches. And of course, there are plenty of threats to our identification. It could well be that there are spatial spillovers. There are just simply incidents requiring police action. And it just so happens that because it's a game, they move to a particular part of London. That's a negative spillovers onto no match areas, and that may lead to us overestimating the effect. Of course, conversely, if there are alternative movements of fans, to try and cope with that, one of our robustness checks is the donut version, where we estimate teams. So, say we looked at Arsenal, then rather than looking at Islington, we'd look at Camden, Haringey, Hackney, and City of London as a donut around Islington, and look at the police use of force there instead. Okay, and spillovers over time would be another concern as well. Maybe there's lots of use of force. It's just that people decide to have their their fights or their antisocial behaviour that requires police action at a different, they just choose to do it on the football match day rather than a few days earlier. And so what we do is we look at match areas, so areas that have got a stadium with football matches taking place. And we look at them on weekends when leagues are not playing. A third concern that essentially led us to think about the European games was potential that we have either missing matches not in our data set or matches that are misallocated. So, for example, we spent some time tidying up playoff matches where it could be that Leyton Orient, as they did last season, make it to the League One playoff final. And if they're listed in the playoff final as being Leyton Orient versus whoever it was, their opponents in that game, then that game, the data set would be listed as being at Leyton Orient in one part of London, when actually it was in Brent because it was at Wembley Stadium. So we spent quite a bit of time reallocating matches. The same was true for FA Cup semi-finals and FA Cup finals, that they're at Wembley rather than at Chelsea's stadium or Tottenham's or Arsenal's stadium or West Ham's. So we've done a little bit of that. And the missing matches, well, that's what we added in with the European matches. Up until fairly recently, we didn't consider European matches, but of course these are a big part of what goes on in the footballing scene in London. So these are our results, and each column represents a regression model where we've got our borough and daily fixed effects in. You'll notice we've got slightly fewer observations here. That's because these were estimated a few months ago when we hadn't updated the football data. The later regressions, we shall see, have got pretty similar coefficients. For example, for the Premier League, they have those 88,000 observations. And so each Premier League match is associated with a significant increase in use of force of 0.772, so about 0.8 additional use of force incidents by police forces when there's a Premier League match on. And they are primarily located around the stadium, so that stacks up. That's what you might expect. There's a smaller effect, and again, consistent across both all use of force incidents and stadium use of force incidents, where the stadium one is more precisely estimated for championship matches, those matches that are a little bit smaller. Cup matches, again, similar in size to championship matches. And then these other matches, third, fourth, fifth division matches, still a significant effect, but a very small effect, 0.02 additional use of force incidents per third division, fourth division, fifth division football match in London. And so an effect significantly smaller. Proportionate, additionally, with the number of fans that are in the stadium for these matches, there's a lot fewer fans going along to a game in the third, fourth, and fifth divisions relative to the Premier League Championship. And cup matches, of course, proportionately will, or at least not proportionally, but at least the latter stages matches will involve bigger teams. And if they don't involve bigger teams, there'll be higher stakes matches, arguably. There's not much action in terms of police use of force incidents on public transport, outside, in pubs and bars, or in other areas. And just to remind you of the magnitude of the effects, on average, there's about 9 or 10 use of force incidents per day. And so the effect relative to that baseline is relatively small, less than 1 additional use of force incidents. So then trying to dig in a little bit further into this effect, we can estimate the same model just over that COVID period where the lockdown and fans were not in stadiums, and we can see that indeed there is no effect of a football match. There's a slight, there's 1 star there, so significant, I guess, at a 10% level, but a negative sign. So I don't know whether that means that in lockdown, people have to go and watch the games on TV, so they're all inside rather than out causing trouble. But otherwise, no significant effect. The donut model, looking at neighbouring areas, you can see that there's no evidence of it being some kind of displacement effect. So it isn't that use of force is being moved from other areas into the area of the game. From column 3, that's one of our robustness checks. And then we look here at Premier League boroughs, so boroughs where a Premier League team is on weekends where there's no game taking place, Championship and other matches or other divisions. And you can see that, again, there's no effect. So it doesn't appear that there's any spatial or temporal spillover effects. Looking a little bit more at the match outcomes, maybe fans get a bit more angry because they've lost. And there's some evidence for that. So the Premier League and all use of force incidents, you can see that the impact when a Premier League team loses is larger than if they win. So again, about 0.77 use of force incidents, which as we saw previously when the home team wins, and more, or closer to 1 additional use of force incident when the home team loses. By and large, all located around the stadium as well. And the effect is there. The effect is there in the stadium, but not in general use of force incidents for Championship or other matches, so non-Premier League matches. If we want to think about that Cardinal trigger of an unexpected loss, here we're using Bet365 odds and the implied probability of a win. So you see we've got here Premier League team wins, but they've only got a 25% or lower chance of winning. You can see that there are fewer use of force incidents in that case, although more in the stadium, but then that's reflecting that baseline that Premier League matches do lead to more use of force incidents within the stadium. If the home team loses, but they had a high chance of winning, so unexpected loss, this Cardinal mechanism, then what you can see here is there is a larger coefficient than in the other cases. So unexpected losses are something that do trigger, it would seem, slightly more. Bear in mind that each regression is each column, is a regression. So we're including all of these different categories as binary variables, dummy variables in our regression. The effect that's there for the Premier League in the stadium is not there, though, when it comes to the Championship. Championship teams that are expecting wins, there's no associated effect. It might be that the effect is more concentrated here, but it's very small. And it may be that in the Championship, there aren't as many extreme probability events. There aren't quite as many Manchester City playing Burnley or there's such mismatched games relative to the Premier League. But either way, there's maybe a small amount of evidence in favour of the emotional triggers, unexpected losses triggering, in this case, police use of force incidents. In other ways to break this up, we could look at games that are just taking place between two London teams. So Tottenham play Arsenal, and then we count it at the at Arsenal Stadium if it's at Arsenal Stadium, or we count it at Tottenham if it's Tottenham's. And you can see a similar effect to the size of the normal Premier League effect there. I actually can't remember how we define big match, but I think it's supposed to do the league position or ELO ratings, implying a probability of about 50-50 of a match outcome. But a big match, or it could be latter stages of cup competitions. No, sorry, cup final stages is here. And so we've got a bigger effect when the match is a big match. When we've got matches involving violent fan bases, the effect is larger as well. So, as mentioned, with the Home Office data on banning and arrests and banning orders, we can therefore order clubs by how many fans they've got banned. And if there are more violent fan bases, there are more use of force incidents. And this is lagging the number of incidents. So if a team is playing that's had lots of use of force incidents in past matches, you see that there is a lagged effect. So in other words, more violent fan bases do lead to more use of force incidents. The last one down here is something that is, I think it's quite interesting. It goes back to the more general context that we're looking at. This is Notting Hill Carnival, is NHC, and this is a festival that takes place in Notting Hill in London every year. I believe it's in the summer. I've never been, so I don't really know. But as you can see, that has a massive effect on police use of force incidents. The coefficient there, when Notting Hill Carnival is on each year, 3 or 4 days a year, 205, 206 additional use of force incidents per day. And that speaks to the fact that, yes, football matches have an impact on police use of force, but it's relatively small. It's absolutely tiny compared to something like the Notting Hill Carnival. Finally, in terms of setting out results, turning to European games or international games. So we've still got our Premier League, Championship and Cup and other matches in as before, with the same kinds of proportionate effects, largely for the Premier League, about 0.7, 0.8 uses of force. But now we're adding in Champions League, Europa League or Europa Conference League matches. And here, what you can see is that the coefficient is significantly larger on all uses of force. So whereas a Premier League match gets about less than one additional use of force incident per game, if it's a European game, that's more like 3 additional use of force incidents. And so it's about 4 times the impact, 3 times as many in the stadium as well. And obviously, there are larger coefficients on public transport and bars and elsewhere, but none of these are significant. Then, when there's an England match, so a game at Wembley involving the England national team, again, this is a bigger coefficient as well, so more than twice the size, 2.5 times the size of a Premier League match. And the other thing to note is that the England effect is distributed further as well. So obviously, there's a stadium effect, twice as large as a Premier League match. But then there's also a effect in pubs and bars, perhaps reflecting the fact that there's general interest in an England match, such that therefore people, if they're not in the stadium, will also be watching it in pubs and bars, and increased incidents elsewhere as well. So there's something unique about, or something distinct about European or international matches. And something that's also worth saying, I didn't mention in terms of missing and misallocated matches, is that there's quite a few football matches or international matches that are played in London and in the UK between other national teams. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but quite often Brazil and Argentina, because a lot of their players are based in Europe, will sometimes play international friendly games against other countries, and that'll be played in London, somewhere in London, perhaps at Arsenal or Tottenham or Brentford or somewhere like that. So we need to include those matches as well. So we're looking at international matches rather than just England matches to perhaps better understand this dynamic. We can, of course, rather than just bunching the Champions League and Europa League and Conference League together, we can also look at them separately. And this is also undoubtedly of interest in terms of trying to understand this impact better. You can see that the impact is larger for Europa League matches than it is for Champions League matches, which is perhaps surprising off the bat, because Champions League matches, that's the premium European competition. The Europa League is the secondary European competition, and the Conference League is the third most premium competition, if you like. And despite that, the Europa League attracts more incidents, and that might be that its fan bases from clubs that are less familiar with playing European competitions. So your Champions League matches would almost always involve Chelsea, Arsenal, and until recently Tottenham Hotspur. Whereas Europa League is perhaps less conventional European teams like West Ham, Crystal Palace this season. But if that's true, it's not there for the Europa Conference League. That may be because the Europa Conference League has only been in operation since 2021, so we don't have as many observations for the Europa Conference League as we do for the other two European competitions. So, wrapping up, we investigate police use of force associated with football matches in London. We find that football matches, Premier League matches, lead to an increase of about 0.7, 0.8 incidents involving police use of force in the areas where the match took place. It's not displacement because there aren't encounters in neighbouring areas. There are events that do intensify forceful police-civilian interaction. There are stronger effects for bigger clubs and those with more violent fan bases. And as we said, there's some evidence for this frustration aggression hypothesis with larger effects, slightly larger effects being associated with unexpected losses. These European matches do appear to be distinct. Club European matches 4 times more likely, England matches twice as likely. I think with England matches at the moment, we're just looking at the impact in Brent, and I think it would be interesting probably to look at the impact across all of London. Perhaps again with a kind of maybe a gravity type way of approaching it, since you imagine the further away from Wembley, the outer lying areas, perhaps there's less interest. In central London, there's perhaps more of an effect. But it's worth emphasising that police use of force increase is limited in its magnitude. It's not massive. Never want to dismiss it as negligible, but it's not dramatic. It's less than 1 episode per average attendance of 37,000, which is, roughly speaking, what a lot of the bigger teams have in London. A Premier League match has an average of about 37,000. It's small compared to other mass events, and we saw that coefficient on the Notting Hill Carnival of more than 200 additional use of force episodes per day, and 4 arrests per 10,000 people. And so it's a relatively small effect. And so what we'd also argue is that these results challenge that prevailing belief that we talked about at the start, that football matches are inherently violent, given that we're finding relatively modest effects relative to other large mass events. And we'll be continuing with this work not least exploring that European dimension. And so any comments and reflections that any of you have on that will be very welcome. And we'll also be, and what we'll do there is I think we'll try and explore a little bit more whether there's an unfamiliarity aspect to it, different ways that fans behave and perhaps that police behave in different countries, how police and fans respond to particular events. Or whether it's related to the importance of matches. So, of course, clubs will play friendly matches against other clubs from around Europe and further afield in friendly games at the start, before the start of the season. And so we're collecting data on friendly matches to see if we can see if it's something related to the perceived importance of these matches. And of course, we'll likely investigate other potential mechanisms for what we're observing there. And then something that I think is particularly interesting is that police use of force and fan public perceptions, not least related to those papers mentioned the George Floyd type incidents of police use of force in America and responses to it, and incidents that Nils has looked at here in the UK. Well, we've got arrest data, we've got use of force data, and we've got fan attendance as well. So we've got quite a lot of data there to think about that kind of dynamic reaction to police use of force and other types of violence within the context of football matches. So with that, I will wrap up. So thank you very much for listening in. I'm happy to take questions. I'm just conscious that I'm in the house on my own, and thankfully the whole presentation has been no deliveries come to the front door. That my son is about to get home from school, and so he may well interrupt us. But assuming he doesn't, we've got loads of time for questions and comments. So please do ask questions and comments if you have them. Jorge, go ahead.
Hello, James. Nice to see you again. Well, you said the paper was already accepted, which is well, it's good. But I think the only comment I want to say is that the effect is even smaller than what you're saying, because when you compare this use of force events in football with I know some concerts and festivals that I forget the name, you're comparing one festival with a bunch of Premier League games. So the effect you're getting is per day, I understand, for I don't know how many Premier League games. So actually the effect is smaller than, and probably it would be worthwhile to actually emphasize that. Because when you read these papers, you tend to think about the game had an impact on violence in that sense. So I don't know. Maybe you could go even with stronger results. I don't know if I'm correct, but that's what I understood.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess, yeah, because we're looking at the counts on a given day in a given area. I mean, we spent quite a bit of time thinking about what else we might compare it to, and I suppose we might try and collect information on rock concerts that take place at Wembley Stadium and whichever other stadiums they take place at in London. But we just haven't, Notting Hill was the most obvious, similar kind of event. So we've used that. And obviously that has a, much bigger effect on police use of force. So, I mean, yeah, obviously, it's one of those presentational things. And I think, yes, I say, while the original paper is now published, this European dimension is particularly interesting, and I think there's lots more work that we're going to be doing based on this. So comments that you have are particularly valuable on thinking about the relative the size of the effect. So thanks, Jorge.
Okay.
Sarah.
Yeah, sorry. I just had a question about the comparison. I was trying to get my head around it because I was thinking something like Notting Hill is all day, and a football match is an hour and a half. Or I know there's before and after. I just wondered how do you make the comparison? I'm just trying to get my head around. I know you did it per thousand, yeah, sort of tens of thousands, but I was just trying to get my head around because I guess when I was thinking about carnivals and things, people have. I guess you could argue the same for football match, drinking all day. I was just trying to get my head around the
Yeah,
comparison.
I mean, the most direct way you can compare is what I realized on this slide here is that I didn't keep in the the equivalent calculation for the number of arrests per football match. So the simplest way to compare it is actually to go back up to here. We've got football match effects around 0.71 and a bit higher, and this is the Notting Hill Carnival effect of 200 or so. And yes, it's the day, and so obviously Notting Hill goes on all day, but football matches are essentially whole day events, right? Especially the more drawn into it you are, you get to the area 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, drinking whatever, and then maybe into the evening as well. So they can be all day events as well.
Yeah, because I know for some football matches, don't they make them early in the day to try.
With that as well.
So I just
Yeah.
wondered if there was any. I guess what I was thinking about is when you particular matches, there will be different number of police present, because I imagine
Yeah.
they will send more police to Millwall games. So this
Yeah.
is my stereotypes to other. So I guess I was thinking when you think about when you're making comparisons, how does the number of police, particularly if you're comparing to something like Notting Hill, does it sort of take into account? There's obviously more police, or have you got information on how many police? I guess you have. Is it just a number of police incidents, or do you know the number of police that were there?
I don't believe we know the number of police that were present at games. So I know Andy was on the call earlier on. I don't know if Nils or Gennaro are. I don't actually know. I don't think we have information on that. And I think obviously there's police resource must impact police use of force incidents in terms of both. There are more police to, I guess, to do things, and also perhaps more police implies
To
a
deter.
threat. People behave
Yeah.
in different ways because they perceive a
Yeah.
threat. So I don't know is the answer to that question. But yeah, kind of, I guess, if it is endogeneity, if that effect.
Yeah, because I guess the other comparison you can make is to other sporting events, isn't it? If you've got the information,
Yeah, we'd
obviously there's
like
not that.
to. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you would know actually, Sarah, because you'd know a bit more about rugby games that take place in London.
Yeah, not as many as there were. Some have left or been picked out, but over the years, you wouldn't have anywhere as near as many. There are some in the championship, but it might just be a useful comparison because there's a lot less police presence. I guess that's why I was thinking there's a lot less police presence in other sporting events relative to football. I guess that's what got me thinking, having been to football and different. So I was just curious on if there was underlying. Because to me, I know that there's a lot more police, but as you said, there's two things that might cancel each other out. There's the more chance of more interaction, but also the greater deterrent. I guess I wondered if there was anything you could do to sort of get at that.
We spent quite a while thinking about comparator, because this was one of the comments that we got through the public from the viewers. And as you say, it's quite hard to think about other sports events just because there isn't the same, and no other sport has that same network of clubs with that same volume of fans going along to them. So essentially in the end we settled on Notting Hill, but we might, I mean, obviously we've got the data and we might try and do a bit more with that.
I mean, I like the idea of rock concerts and things because I feel like it's shorter duration. So I think if you can get information on that, I think that would be a useful comparison. It's just because Notting Hill is over the bank holiday, so lots of people have worked. I don't know if it's if there's other drivers.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I just don't know enough about Notting Hill, to be perfectly honest, to really say too much about it, other than it obviously generates a huge amount of police use of force.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people there, isn't there? I looked it up, and there's 2 million, 2 million people in the last attended the last one. I know you obviously do it by, tens of thousands, but yeah, no, I was just curious. I think it's nice. I always think
Yeah,
there's always things you want to rule out, isn't there?
yeah, exactly. No, but yeah, I mean, I think you're right to ask the question about comparator events, I think.
Okay, as I said, I'll let other people come and ask their questions.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
Any other questions and comments? Looks like a no. In which case, I am sharing my screen. And I'll say thank you very much, everyone, for your attention, questions and comments. If you have any other questions and comments you'd like to get to us, please do. You can message me one way or another. And we will return next week. And I'm just trying to find who it is. I've got a feeling it's Alex. Yeah, Alex Farnell from Maynooth University in Ireland. He's going to present the case for the defence, co-worker effects on pay in the NFL. I should say also that Alex was a very generous, gave a very generous reference to this paper in his talk, a really interesting talk last week in Gijón, looking at the impact of footballers being burgled on their subsequent performance on the field. So thanks very much, everyone. Have a great weekend. Look forward to seeing you again next week.